At the company's annual gala, my CEO wife called a male intern Hubby in front of the entire executive floor and over 300 employees. I stood in the corner holding the speech cards I had written for her and pretended I hadn't heard. The moment the gala ended, my wife reached for my arm, but I stepped sideways and said coldly, "Don't touch me. Go home with your husband." She panicked. As the crystal chandeliers of the five-star hotel ballroom blazed overhead, my CEO wife, Vivienne Cross, turned to that young intern named Julian Marsh and smiled. In front of everyone, over 300 employees, board members, and industry partners, she said, "Hubby, grab my coat for me." The ballroom fell into a brief, stunned silence, then erupted into whoops and applause. I, her actual husband, stood in the corner, still holding the keynote speech cards she had asked me to prepare in advance. Julian blushed but didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and took the designer blazer off Vivienne's shoulders. His movements so practiced they spoke of repetition. He leaned close to her ear and murmured loud enough for nearby tables to catch, "CEO Cross, no backing out now." The crowd roared louder. People slapped the tables, whistled, and some turned to look at me. No one on the executive floor knew that Vivienne and I had been married for 3 years. Back then, she had just taken over as CEO of Cross Innovations, and the board was scrutinizing her every move. She didn't want anyone to think she had climbed up on her husband's shoulders.
I believed her.
I took off my wedding ring, locked it in my desk drawer, and threw myself into the trenches with her. All-night strategy sessions, product crisis drills, everything. I helped her rescue the nearly bankrupt core business division. But now, she sat at the center of the head table, wearing the custom midnight blue gown I had gifted her, adorned with the bespoke diamond earrings I had designed for her, smiling as she called another man her husband. I didn't storm over.
I didn't cause a scene.
I simply pulled out my phone and pressed record. In the frame, Julian's hand rested on the back of Vivienne's chair. She didn't push him away. She even glanced up at him with an expression of unmistakable indulgence. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Julian is so lucky. He just joined the company, and the CEO already dotes on him like that." Another voice chimed in, "What do you know? He's young and knows how to sweet talk. Not like Director Nathan, always serious and buried in work. The CEO is probably bored to death of him by now." I heard it all. I didn't turn around. The MC, feeding off the energy, grabbed the microphone. "Since CEO Cross already called you Hubby, shouldn't Julian make a little statement tonight?" Julian stood up, raised his champagne flute, glanced first at Vivienne, then deliberately looked at me, a brief, flickering glance that couldn't hide its provocation. He said, "I'm just a newly transferred junior associate. I wouldn't dare presume to be worthy of the CEO. But if the CEO is willing, of course, I'd be delighted to stand by her side, both at work and in life." Applause thundered. Vivienne laughed and scolded him with a dismissive "cut the nonsense." But she didn't deny it. She didn't explain, and she didn't even glance my way. I saved the video, sent it to my personal encrypted cloud, and backed it up on 2 separate servers. This wasn't the first time I'd sensed something wrong. A month ago, right after Julian was transferred into the Strategic Projects Division, Vivienne assigned him to the Apex project, our flagship AI-driven logistics platform. 2 weeks ago, I discovered he had used temporary access credentials to download the project's core algorithm.
3 days ago, finance accidentally CC'd me on an expense report.
Julian had purchased a luxury watch worth over $1830, with the reimbursement note reading client liaison gift, approved personally by Vivienne. And tonight, she called him Hubby.
The chain of evidence had finally closed its last link.
During the second half of the gala, Vivienne had a few glasses of wine, her cheeks flushed. Julian stayed by her side the entire time, deflecting drinks for her, handing her napkins, and even brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I sat at a distant table, quietly finishing the last bite of my cold filet mignon. My colleague David Cho approached with a glass, lowering his voice. "Nathan, don't take it to heart. The CEO was probably just joking around."
I looked up at him.
His eyes darted away. I smiled.
"You think that was a joke too?"
David didn't dare answer. I set down my napkin and stood up. On stage, Vivienne was being toasted by several department heads, with Julian standing beside her like a favored attendant. Seeing me rise, he suddenly raised his voice. "Director Nathan, want you toast the CEO? Today marks the milestone completion of the Apex project, and the CEO is the real hero." At his words, everyone at the table turned to look. The Apex project was an intelligent logistics system I had led my engineering team to build over 9 grueling months. Vivienne had only appeared for 10 minutes at the final client signing, but in Julian's mouth, she was the sole hero. I raised my glass. Vivienne finally looked at me, a flicker of warning in her eyes. She was afraid I wouldn't give her face, afraid I'd call her out in public. I walked to the head table, set the glass down without drinking, and said evenly, "Congratulations, CEO Cross." Julian chimed in with a smile. "Director Nathan, you don't sound too happy." I looked at him.
Which part of my tone gave you that impression?
Julian's expression stiffened slightly. Vivian frowned.
Nathan Cole, everyone's in a good mood today.
"Don't spoil it." I nodded.
Fine.
I turned and walked away. Behind me, someone chuckled quietly. Someone muttered that I was petty. Someone whispered that technical people just had no social skills. I reached the grand entrance of the hotel. The night breeze cut through the lingering alcohol haze. The driver pulled up in the black sedan, mine and Vivian's, registered under her name, but the loan payments came from my account, and the driver's salary was also paid by me. Just as I was about to get in, Vivian chased after me, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement, Julian following behind, still holding her blazer. Vivian reached out to take my arm, her voice low.
Haven't you made enough of a scene?
Everyone inside is watching me.
I sidestepped and her hand closed on empty air. She froze. I looked at her and said word by word, "Don't touch me. Go home with your husband." The entrance fell dead silent. Vivian's face changed color, and the smugness in Julian's eyes faltered. Vivian whispered, "Nathan Cole, what exactly do you mean by that?" I opened the car door, retrieved her handbag from the back seat, and handed it to Julian. "Take care of CEO Cross." Julian didn't take it. I tossed the bag into his arms, turned and got into a waiting taxi. The moment the door closed, Vivian finally panicked, slapping the window and calling my name. I didn't look back. My phone buzzed. A message from Lena Park, head of the legal department and one of the few people who knew the original intellectual property contract for the Apex project. She wrote, "The permission change you asked me to investigate. Someone used your digital signature to transfer the Apex core module administrative rights to Julian." I stared at the line and let out a humorless laugh. So tonight's Hubby was just the appetizer. The real knife had already been slipped behind my back.
I didn't go home.
I had the taxi drop me off at the Cross Innovations headquarters. At 1:30 in the morning, only the 21st floor still had its lights on. That was my office, the place where the first line of code for the Apex project had been written. I swiped my badge and the system prompt chimed. "Nathan Cole, Director of Advanced Engineering. All systems normal." Hearing those words, "all systems normal," I suddenly found it bitterly ironic. Someone had already used my digital signature to transfer the core modules, yet my access still showed as normal. The office was silent. I turned on my computer and first logged into the server backend to export the permission operation logs from the last 30 days. Julian's temporary account appeared 19 times, 7 of those entries occurring late at night. 3 login addresses originated from the high-rise penthouse registered under Vivian's name. I had never lived in that apartment. Vivian said it was kept for visiting VIP clients, and I never questioned it. Now the logs told me that Julian had been logging into my project backend from there in the dead of night. I downloaded the records and made 2 encrypted backups. Then I opened the digital signature system. The transfer application had been submitted at 11:47 p.m. last Friday. The content was straightforward. To foster new talent, Nathan Cole voluntarily transfers management authority of the Apex project's core modules to Julian Marsh, who will be responsible for subsequent upgrades and external presentations. The signature bore my name. The handwriting didn't match, but the digital certificate was authentic. I stared at the screen for 10 seconds, then dialed Lena Park's number. She answered quickly.
You're at headquarters.
"Yeah."
I figured as much.
There was the rustle of papers on her end. This authorization application went through the CEO's special channel. The approver was Vivian Cross. She bypassed legal review entirely. I asked, "How did the digital signature get applied?" Lena paused. "Did you lend your authentication token to CEO Cross last month?"
I remembered.
Last month, Vivian said there was a vendor renewal contract that urgently needed my signature. She was in an off-site meeting and asked me to leave my token in her office safe. I did. She said she would return it after using it. Later, she handed me an envelope, saying the token was inside. I was deep in Apex testing at the time and never opened it to check. I pulled the envelope from my drawer now. It was empty. I let out a short, hollow laugh. Lena's voice was grave on the other end of the line. "Nathan, this is no longer a marital dispute. Forging authorization and transferring core technology management rights, if escalated, this involves corporate embezzlement and trade secret violations. I know what you're planning to do."
I looked at the wedding photo on my desk.
In the picture, Vivienne leaned on my shoulder, smiling with genuine warmth. Back then, she wasn't a CEO. Back then, Cross Innovation's core division was on the verge of being dissolved. She had broken down outside the boardroom, saying she didn't want to be pushed out by the shareholders. I authorized the AI-driven logistics algorithm I had spent 5 years developing to the company and helped her climb out of the red. I thought marriage meant carrying the burden together. But now she was using the key I gave her to open my door for someone else. I said, "Don't move on anything yet." Lena was taken aback. "You're still going to endure this?" I saved a screenshot of the authorization application. "I want to see how they perform tomorrow." After hanging up, I pulled out the documents I had prepared in my drawer. A resignation letter,
A divorce petition.
and a notice of termination for the Apex Core Algorithm licensing agreement. I hadn't planned to use these 3 documents so soon. I had given Vivienne chances. The first time was when she brought Julian into the project team. I cautioned her that newcomers shouldn't have access to core modules, and she said I was stifling young talent. The second time was when Julian presented incorrect algorithm logic at the weekly meeting, and I corrected him on the spot. His eyes turned venomous, and Vivienne scolded me afterward for not preserving his dignity. The third time was when Julian took the proposal I had written to meet a key client, but couldn't answer technical questions when pressed. Vivienne, in turn, blamed me for not tutoring him in advance. Now there would be no fourth time. At 3:00 in the morning, I returned to the marital home. The living room light was on, and Vivienne sat on the sofa, her expression dark and tense. She hadn't changed out of her midnight blue gown. Julian wasn't there, but on the coffee table lay a man's tie, not mine. When Vivienne saw me, she immediately stood up.
Where have you been?
"I called you over 20 times. I pulled out my phone, showing 27 missed calls. I didn't explain." Vivienne took a deep breath, softening her tone slightly. "What happened tonight was my fault, but it was just a joke at the gala. Julian is young." Everyone was teasing.
I misspoke.
I looked at her.
Miss Polk?
She frowned.
Nathan Cole, are you really going to fixate on a single choice of words?
I walked over to the coffee table and picked up the tie. "Did you also misspeak and leave this behind?"
Her face stiffened.
Julian had too much to drink. I had the driver bring him up here to rest for a while. "Rest long enough to leave his tie in our home, as a souvenir?" Her voice rose.
Can you stop being so sarcastic?
I tossed the tie back onto the table. "I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just confirming. Does bringing a subordinate back to our marital home to rest also count as a work necessity?" Vivienne bit her lip. She feared this calmness of mine the most. She had strategies for arguments, for cold wars. But when I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, she couldn't gauge how much patience I had left. She stepped closer, trying to take my hand. "Nathan, we've been married for 3 years.
You should know me.
There is nothing between Julian and me."
Has my junior just graduated?
No connections.
I only wanted to help him out. I looked at her hand, which wore a wedding ring with my initials engraved on the inside. But tonight, that same hand had taken Julian's coat. I stepped back. Vivienne's hand fell empty again, and anger finally flickered in her eyes. "Nathan Cole, what exactly do you want from me? Was I supposed to announce to the entire company that you're my husband? Didn't you agree to keep our marriage confidential?"
Now you're using this to blame me?
I nodded. "I agreed to keep the marriage confidential."
I didn't agree to let you call someone else husband.
She froze. I continued.
I agreed to support you.
"I didn't agree to let you use my digital signature to pave the way for others." Vivienne's face drained of color. "You investigated me," I smiled. That sentence was clearer than any explanation.
She didn't first ask? What digital signature?
She asked if I had investigated her. I said Vivienne will be attending the project meeting at 9:00 tomorrow. You'd better think carefully whether you explain yourself, or I explain for you. She stared at me, her expression shifting from panic to a kind of weary defiance. Don't blow this out of proportion. I turned and walked into my study. Just before the door closed, she suddenly said, "Nathan Cole, you can't leave. Cross Innovations can't run the Apex platform without you." I stopped but didn't turn around.
Then tomorrow, we'll see who really can't manage without whom.
The study door closed, and I heard the sound of a glass shattering in the living room. My phone vibrated again. Lena had sent a second batch of information. Julian's luxury watch wasn't a client gift. It had been charged to Vivienne's private supplementary credit card, with the note reading, "Welcome bonus." Below that was a photo of Julian, wearing the watch, arm around Vivienne, standing on the penthouse balcony. The caption read, "Thanks for the gift, darling." At 9:00 the next morning, the Apex Project regular meeting began on time. The conference room was packed. Vivienne sat at the head of the table, with Julian on her right, the seat that used to be mine. When I walked in, everyone looked up at me. Some expressions held awkwardness, others entertained curiosity. Julian wore a sharply tailored new suit, and on his wrist gleamed that watch worth over $18,000. When he saw me, he deliberately adjusted his cuff. Vivian's expression was cool and composed.
She didn't offer me a seat and I didn't ask.
I pulled out a chair at the far end, sat down, and placed my laptop on the table. Vivian got straight to the point. Today's meeting includes a personnel adjustment. Although Julian has been with us for a short time, he learns quickly and has received positive client feedback. Starting today, he will serve as the deputy director of the Apex project, responsible for subsequent version development and client presentations. Sparse, uncomfortable applause rippled through the room. I didn't move. David Cho, the project manager, stared down at the table. Grace Liu, the testing lead, had a grim set expression. They all knew who had built Apex, but no one dared to speak in front of Vivian. Julian stood up, smiling with practiced humility. Thank you for the trust, CEO Cross, and thank you all for your support, especially Director Nathan. I'll need your guidance going forward. He emphasized the word guidance. I looked up at him.
Are you sure you want my guidance?
He smiled.
Of course.
Although the CEO said I can handle things independently, I'm still young, and Director Nathan has more experience. Vivian frowned.
Nathan Cole, Julian is showing you respect.
I nodded. Then let me start with a basic question. Julian's smile dimmed slightly. I connected my laptop to the conference room screen and projected the Apex system architecture diagram. The core scheduling model of Apex has 3 layers. The first handles real-time data filtering. The second performs route optimization and prediction. The third manages resource allocation.
Now that you're taking over as deputy director, tell me, why can't the threshold rollback mechanism in the second layer run in parallel with the external client interface?
Julian's face went pale. The room fell silent. He opened his mouth. I reviewed the materials yesterday. It should be because running in parallel would cause data latency.
I looked at him.
Wrong.
Vivian immediately interjected.
Nathan Cole, this is a regular meeting, not an exam.
I ignored her. It wouldn't cause latency. It would cause data contamination.
Latency can be solved with caching.
Contamination directly leads to resource allocation errors. I documented this issue in the project log 3 weeks ago. Since you downloaded the core plan, why don't you know this? The color drained from Julian's face. Vivian turned sharply to me.
What do you mean?
I clicked to the next page. The screen displayed the backend access logs. Julian's temporary account. 19 login records, 7 late-night visits, and 3 originating from the penthouse apartment. Gasps filled the room. Julian immediately stood up. Director Nathan, this is slander. I'm a project member.
What's wrong with logging into the system?
I said, logging in is fine. Downloading the core plan could be considered learning. But using my digital signature to apply for a permission transfer, that's not learning. I opened the authorization request. The document clearly stating I voluntarily transfer my permissions was displayed on the big screen. Everyone saw my digital signature, and also the approver, Vivian Cross. Vivian's expression finally cracked. She lowered her voice. Turn it off first.
I looked at her. Why?
This is an internal company document, and forging my signature is also an internal process. Julian panicked. Don't slander me. The digital signature is real and the process is real. Maybe Director Nathan signed it himself and forgot. I looked at him. Whether I forgot or not, the token usage records will tell. Lena Park pushed the door open, holding a printed file in her hand. Vivian's face darkened. Lena, I didn't ask legal to attend the project meeting. Lena placed the file on the table. CEO Cross, this already involves an intellectual property dispute. Legal must be present. Julian's fingers clenched. I flipped the file to the second page. The last time the token was used, last Friday, 11:46 p.m.
Location, the CEO's office.
Operator account, Vivian Cross. The meeting room erupted. Vivian stood up abruptly. Enough. She looked at me, anger and panic warring in her eyes. Nathan Cole, do you have to embarrass me in front of the entire company? I looked at her calmly. When you called someone else husband at the company gala, did you ever think about embarrassing me? When those words landed, the conference room went so silent. You could hear the HVAC hum. Some lowered their heads. Others stared at Julian. Julian's face cycled through pale and flushed. Vivian gritted her teeth.
That was just a joke,
I said. And this forged authorization, was that a joke too?
She couldn't speak.
I took out the first document and pushed it across the table toward her. This is my resignation letter. Vivian's pupils contracted.
I took out the second.
And this is the divorce petition.
The entire conference room seemed to hit pause. I placed the third document on top. This is the pre-notice of termination for the Apex Core Algorithm Licensing Agreement. According to the original contract, if Cross Innovations transfers, copies, modifies, or authorizes a third party to manage the core module without my written consent, I have the right to terminate the license with 30 days notice. Vivian's face turned ashen, but Julian still hadn't grasped the gravity. He sneered. Director Nathan, who are you trying to scare with a resignation letter? The Apex project belongs to the company, not to you personally. I looked at him.
Are you sure?
Lena projected a contract onto the screen. It was the technology licensing agreement signed 3 years ago between Cross Innovations and my personal R&D lab, stating that the core algorithm's ownership belonged to Nathan Cole personally, and the company only held usage rights.
No one in the meeting room spoke.
Julian's lips moved, but no sound came out. Vivian stared at the contract as if seeing it for the first time, but she had signed it. She just forgot. Back then, when she had come to me, desperate and in tears, begging me to save the company, she had signed her name stroke by stroke. I stood up, packed my laptop. CEO Cross, you have 29 days. I turned and walked out. When I reached the door, the front desk coordinator rushed over. CEO Cross, Mr. Alistair Grant from Meridian Global has arrived. He says he wants to see the real person in charge of the Apex project. Julian jumped up as if seizing a lifeline. I'll go greet him, but the coordinator looked at me, her voice clear and steady. Mr. Grant said he specifically wants to see Director Nathan Cole. Meridian Global was the largest client for the Apex project. The contract value stood at $150 million. Accounting for nearly half of Cross Innovations' annual revenue. On the day of the signing ceremony, Vivian had stood on stage, cameras flashing, industry leaders applauding.
Everyone called her the savior of the company.
But the person who had actually worked shoulder to shoulder with Meridian's technical team for 7 months was me.
Grant didn't care for pleasantries.
When he walked into the meeting room with his technical deputy and procurement director, his first words were, "Director Cole, I hear you're leaving Cross Innovations." Vivian immediately stood up, her professional smile in place. Mr. Grant, you've misunderstood. It's just an internal role adjustment. Director Cole has been a bit emotionally fatigued lately. Before I could speak, Mr. Grant frowned. Emotionally fatigued?
Vivian's smile froze.
Julian quickly stepped forward.
Hello, Mr.
Grant.
I'm Julian Marsh, the new deputy director of the Apex project. I'll be handling the liaison with your team from now on. He extended his hand. Mr.
Grant didn't shake it.
He looked at me. Director Cole, did you arrange this?
I said no.
Mr.
Grant's face darkened. Everyone in the meeting room was standing. Julian's hand hung in midair, as awkward as a misplaced prop. Vivian quickly tried to smooth things over. Julian is someone I've personally mentored. He's young but very capable.
Nathan Cole will guide him during the transition period.
Mr.
Grant gave a cold, short laugh.
CEO Cross, I purchased the Apex system, not an intern development program. Those words made Vivian's face go white. Julian gritted his teeth and withdrew his hand. Vivian glanced at me, a clear warning in her eyes. Don't undermine me here. I sat down and opened my laptop. Miss Grant, today was originally an internal project meeting. I wasn't aware you'd be stopping by. Is there an urgent matter? Mr. Grant placed a report on the table. Our internal quality assurance tests found serious issues with the new software patch you submitted last week. The route optimization module is 37% less efficient than the original version, and the scheduling results are producing duplicate assignments. We want to know who made the changes. The meeting room fell silent instantly. I looked at Julian. Julian's face twitched, and Vivian also turned toward him. Julian quickly said, "This is just test environment fluctuation, not necessarily a version issue."
The technical deputy behind Mr.
Grant connected his laptop to the screen and projected several test reports. All the errors were concentrated in the second layer model, the same layer I had asked Julian about earlier, which he had gotten wrong.
Mr.
Grant said coldly, "Our technical team reviewed it thoroughly.
The problem isn't fluctuation.
Someone arbitrarily changed the threshold rollback mechanism. Director Cole, this isn't your style."
I didn't answer.
Instead, I pulled up the code submission records.
At 2:17 a.m.
Last Wednesday, Julian had submitted a version modification with the note, "Optimized prediction response speed," approved by CEO Cross. I projected the records onto the screen. Harris, who made the changes. Julian stood up abruptly. I optimized it as the CEO requested. I only changed a few parameters.
I didn't expect it to have such a big impact.
Grace Liu couldn't hold back. Director Cole had already flagged that parameter as prohibited from individual modification. Didn't you read the annotations?
Julian's face burned red.
The annotations were too technical. It's normal for a newcomer to overlook them occasionally. I smiled. It's normal for a newcomer to overlook them. And it's also normal for a deputy director to overlook them? He was left speechless. Vivian's face grew increasingly grim.
Mr.
Grant looked at her. CEO Cross. Is this your new project lead? Vivian took a deep breath.
Mr.
Grant, this was an internal oversight. I will handle it. The Apex project will not be affected.
Mr.
Grant didn't respond to her. Instead, he looked at me. Director Cole, if you leave this project, can it still be delivered on schedule? Vivian immediately said, of course it can.
I said no.
Both voices rang out simultaneously. Vivian whipped her head around to stare at me. I said calmly, the core algorithm license remains with me. The current version can run, but subsequent upgrades, bug fixes, and client customizations all require my authorization and confirmation. Without my consent, anyone modifying the core module constitutes a breach of contract.
Mr. Grant nodded slowly.
Understood.
He stood up. Vivian was visibly alarmed.
Mr.
Grant, what are you doing?
Mr.
Grant said, Meridian Global is suspending the next phase of payment. Well, wait until Cross Innovations provides us with a clear explanation, who is the project lead, whether the licensing is legally sound, and how the version issues will be resolved. All color drained from Vivian's face. A $150 million contract payment suspended. The board would certainly demand accountability. And all of this had happened 20 minutes after I submitted my resignation.
Mr.
Grant paused at the door and looked back at me. Director Cole, Meridian Global has always valued your expertise. If you personally establish a new venture in the future, feel free to have someone contact me. As soon as those words were spoken, everyone in the meeting room shifted uncomfortably. Vivian stared at me, and the panic in Julian's eyes could no longer be disguised.
After Mr.
Grant left, Vivian closed the meeting room door and said in a low, strained voice, Nathan Cole, are you satisfied now?
I looked at her.
The version wasn't modified by me.
You knew perfectly well that Miss
Grant only trusts my work.
So why didn't you help the company smooth things over?
I did help, I said.
I pointed to the code records on the screen.
Over 9 months, I helped you cover every technical loophole, shielded you from the board's doubts, and helped you navigate 3 rounds of pricing negotiations with Meridian. Now you hand the project to Julian. Let him take my plan, modify my code, and when things go wrong, you expect me to keep covering it up? Vivian's eyes reddened as if she was about to cry. Before, whenever her eyes grew misty, I would stop, hand her a tissue, and say, forget it. This time, I didn't move.
Julian suddenly spoke up.
Director Cole, you don't need to bring personal emotions into work. The CEO just wanted to train me, and you're going to destroy the entire project because of a joke last night. I turned to look at him.
A joke last night?
I opened my phone and pulled up the photo, the screenshot of his social media post. He was wearing the watch Vivian had given him, standing on the penthouse balcony, with the caption, thanks for the gift, darling.
I placed the phone on the table.
And what about this? Julian's face went white. Vivian reached out to grab the phone, but I retrieved it first. CEO Cross, don't touch my evidence. Her hand froze in midair. I looked at her, my voice very quiet. From today onward, let the lawyers handle all the talking. The meeting room door opened again. The board chairman's assistant stood at the door, his expression tight. CEO Cross, the chairman wants you and Director Cole to report to his office immediately. Vivian swayed slightly on her feet. I knew the first domino had fallen. The chairman's office was on the top floor. Arthur Cross sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his expression even darker than his daughter's. He was Vivian's father and the largest early investor in Cross Innovations. 3 years ago, when the company was on the verge of collapse, he had refused to continue his support. He said Vivian was too young and inexperienced to hold power. It was I who had brought the early prototype of Apex and secured the first partnership order that changed his mind. Since then, he had been outwardly polite to me. But deep down, he had always seen me as a resource the Cross family could wield, useful, but never permitted to have a will of my own. When we entered, Arthur slammed a document onto the desk.
Nathan Cole, what exactly is the meaning of this?
I looked at him. Resignation, divorce, and termination of unauthorized licensing. Vivian's face was paper white. Arthur pounded the desk.
Nonsense.
Taking a marital quarrel out on the company's core project. Do you have any sense of the bigger picture? I smiled.
Chairman Cross, if you consider forging a digital signature to be a marital quarrel, then I have nothing else to say.
Arthur's eyes darkened. He knew very well how serious this was, but he was accustomed to suppressing me. Vivian said quietly, Dad, I'll handle this. Arthur glared at her. Handle it? Meridian Global has suspended payments. The board is in an uproar. What are you going to handle it with? Vivian bit her lip, turned to me, and lowered her voice.
Nathan, let's stabilize the project first.
Okay.
We can discuss the divorce at home.
As for Julian, I'll remove him from the project team. Julian, standing just outside the door, heard this and his expression instantly crumpled.
I glanced at him.
Are you removing him now because you realize you were wrong, or because Mr.
Grant suspended the payments.
Vivian's eyes flickered, but she didn't answer. I understood. She wasn't regretting the hurt she caused me. She was only regretting that the matter had escalated to the board. Arthur said coldly, Nathan Cole, don't go too far.
Vivian has treated you well over the years.
The company gave you the title of engineering director, a high salary, project bonuses. Now you're biting the hand that fed you. I placed my phone on the table and opened a bank transfer record. When you say treated well, Chairman Cross, do you mean the fact that half of my 3-year salary was quietly funneled back into the company's operational accounts? Or that the licensing fees owed to my personal lab have been delayed indefinitely? Arthur's face stiffened. I opened a second document. This is the accumulated licensing fee. Cross Innovations owes my lab $6 million. CEO Cross said the budget was tight, so I never pressed for payment. Vivian lowered her head. I continued. And this is Julian's reimbursement records for the past 3 months, totaling $48,000. Luxury watches, penthouse furnishings, a private car service, custom suits, all approved by CEO Cross. Arthur turned sharply to his daughter.
Have you lost your mind?
Vivian's face was bloodless.
Dad, I just wanted him to look presentable for client meetings.
I said, which client required him to log into the core system from your penthouse at dawn? Arthur's gaze turned ice cold. A slight noise came from outside the door. Julian was turning to leave. I spoke. Julian.
He stopped.
I turned to look at him.
Come in.
Vivian instinctively said, Nathan, don't make a scene. I ignored her. Julian walked back in, forcing an expression of calm. Director Cole, don't keep bringing up the penthouse as if there's something improper between the CEO and me. That day, I was just helping her organize files, and it got late, so I used her Wi-Fi. I nodded. Then explain why you used her personal desktop computer to log into my project backend. Julian's face stiffened. I opened the third piece of evidence. The penthouse network login records.
Device name, Julian's MacBook.
Login time 1:32 a.m.
Files accessed Apex Core Module Parameter Descriptions, Meridian Custom Pricing Model, Project Authorization Application Template.
Julian's fingers clenched.
Vivian stared at the screen, finally realizing I wasn't just holding emotional grievances. I had a chain of evidence that could dismantle them both. Julian panicked.
I was just learning.
The CEO told me to grow quickly, and I wanted to prove my ability. I said, so you forged my authorization. Julian immediately pointed at Vivian. The token was given to me by the CEO.
I didn't know it was yours.
The office fell deathly silent. Vivian turned sharply to him. Julian realized he had slipped, and his face went white as a sheet. I said nothing, but Arthur understood everything. He looked at his daughter, his voice terrifyingly low.
Did you really give him the token?
Vivian's lips trembled. I just wanted him to get familiar with the process early.
I didn't think he would.
I let out a laugh. Now she was trying to cut ties, but it was far too late. I picked up the resignation letter from the table.
Chairman Cross, I'm not here to negotiate today.
I'm here to inform you. In 30 days, the Apex Core license will automatically terminate. If Cross Innovations wants to continue using it, you may renegotiate the contract. Arthur stared at me.
What are your conditions?
I said, first, dismiss Julian and conduct a public investigation into the forged authorization. Second, pay the overdue licensing fees owed to my lab. Third, Vivian Cross will no longer participate in the Apex project. Fourth, the divorce settlement between Vivian and me will be based on actual contributions to premarital and marital assets.
Vivian looked up sharply. Nathan Cole, you're going all out.
I looked at her. When you brought Julian into our marital home, did you think that wasn't going all out? Her eyes welled up. He and I really never. I cut her off.
That's your issue.
Not a reason for me to keep enduring.
Julian suddenly dropped to his knees.
CEO, I was wrong.
I just wanted to prove myself too badly. I never meant to take Director Cole's position.
I looked down at him.
That's not what you said last night. I played a recording. After the gala, Julian's voice came through clearly from the corridor as he spoke to a colleague. What is Nathan Cole anyway? The CEO will hand Apex over to me eventually. Hess just an old engineer who doesn't understand how the world works. The CEO's been tired of him for a long time. The recording ended. Julian knelt on the floor, his face like a corpse. Vivienne closed her eyes. Arthur picked up his phone, his voice cold and decisive. Notify HR to suspend all of Julian's access credentials. Notify audit to review all reimbursements and system access records from the past 3 months.
Julian jerked his head up.
CEO. Vivienne didn't look at him. In that moment, she finally understood. Julian wasn't her future. He was a pawn she had used to provoke me and soothe her own ego. And when a pawn gets into trouble, it's the first to be sacrificed. I turned and left the office. Vivienne chased after me, grabbing my sleeve at the elevator.
Nathan, I really know I was wrong.
I looked down at her hand. Let go.
She didn't.
Her voice trembled. I was just so tired.
Everyone says the company relies on you.
That I'm just a figurehead as CEO. I didn't want to live in your shadow anymore. Julian admired me. He listened to me.
I cut her off.
So you called him husband?
Her fingers loosened. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Just before they closed, she said tearfully, "You never used to treat me like this." I looked at her.
You never used to hand someone a knife to stab me with?
The elevator doors shut. My phone buzzed with an email. Lena Park had sent preliminary audit results. Julian hadn't just downloaded the Apex plan. He had also sent some materials to a competing logistics tech firm. My eyes turned cold. This betrayal wasn't just about marriage. They had nearly sold off everything I had built. The company had originally scheduled a major launch event for Apex 2. Zero, a grand spectacle. Vivienne had been preparing for 3 months. Media, clients, investors, and the board were all invited. Julian was slated to give the core presentation, using the event to officially transition from intern to project lead. Vivienne also planned to use it to prove that Apex didn't rely solely on me. But after the audit began, all of Julian's permissions were frozen. He panicked. So did Vivienne. The night before the launch, she came to my office. I was packing up my final batch of personal files. She stood at the door, her eyes red and swollen.
Nathan, the launch tomorrow can't fail.
I didn't look up. So,
You give the presentation, she said.
I'll emphasize in my introduction that you're the core lead for Apex.
Julian won't appear?
I laughed. Now the CEO remembers him, the core lead. Her face paled.
I know you hate me, but hundreds of employees depend on this project for their livelihoods.
You can't let everyone suffer because of what's between us.
I paused. She used that line too smoothly.
Every time she made a mistake before, Shed invoked the employees, the bigger picture, as if my refusal to yield meant I lacked perspective.
I asked her, when you forged the authorization, did you think about those hundreds of employees?
She was silent.
When you let Julian tamper with the code, did you think about the client's losses? Her eyes grew redder.
When you pushed me to the edge of the project, did you think I was also part of this company?
She finally broke down crying. I just wanted to prove myself.
I looked at her.
Proving yourself doesn't mean stepping on me to lift another man up. She had no reply. I handed her a document. I can go on stage at tomorrow's launch, but not as an employee of Cross Innovations. Vivienne took the document, and her expression crumbled the moment she saw the title. Temporary Technical Service Agreement.
Fees calculated by the hour.
Authorization limited to fixing display issues in the current version, excluding subsequent upgrades. Her fingers trembled. "You're going to be this clinical with me?" I said. "From the moment you called Julian Hubby, we should have been clinical." She stood there, strength draining from her frame. In the end, she signed. On the day of the launch event, the venue was packed. Media cameras pointed at the stage. Vivienne wore a sharp white suit, her makeup flawless, showing no trace of having cried the night before. Julian wasn't in the guest section, but I knew he was there, hiding in the backstage corridor with a laptop, his expression dark. When the event began, Vivienne took the stage to give her speech. She spoke of Cross Innovations' 3 years of refinement, of launching Apex 2.
0.
She said the team was young, energetic, and innovative. She didn't mention my name.
Not until the demonstration segment.
She paused, then said, "The core technical lead for the Apex system, Director Nathan Cole, will now conduct the demonstration." Applause rippled from the audience. As I stepped onto the stage, I caught a glimpse of Julian staring at me intently from backstage.
I connected the equipment.
The screen lit up, and the system booted. The first phase ran normally. The second phase, road optimization, was normal. The third phase, just as resource allocation was about to display, The screen suddenly went black. Exclamations rose from the audience. Vivianne's face changed, and chaos broke out at the technical station. I looked down at the logs. Someone backstage was trying to forcibly switch the demo version. The account was a temporary administrator account.
I didn't need to guess who.
Julian.
He wanted the launch to fail. If the demo crashed, he could claim I had sabotaged it and muddy the waters. Vivianne also realized what was happening. She looked toward the backstage, but Julian was already gone.
I didn't panic.
I pressed the backup terminal and switched to a read-only mirror environment. The screen lit up again, and the venue fell silent. I picked up the microphone. Someone just attempted to switch the demo version. To avoid disrupting the event, I'll continue with the demonstration. However, after it concludes, Cross Innovations will need to provide an explanation to its clients and investors. Vivianne's face turned ghostly pale, and the media in the audience were already recording. I continued operating. Apex 2.
Zero ran fully real-time data cleaning, route optimization, resource allocation, anomaly rollback, all completed smoothly.
The final result appeared on the big screen. Efficiency improvement, 42%. Thunderous applause filled the venue.
Mr.
Grant, seated in the front row, nodded slowly. I released the mouse but didn't step down immediately. Vivianne looked at me, a flicker of pleading in her eyes. She wanted me to stay silent, at least not here, but I had already given her too many chances to save face. I pulled up the back-end logs, and the record of the abnormal operation was projected onto the big screen. A temporary admin account created by Julian Marsh, approved by Vivianne Cross, created 2 hours before the launch event. The audience erupted in murmurs. Vivianne shot to her feet. I turned to her. CEO Cross, how do you explain this account? The media lenses swung toward her. Her lips were bloodless.
Why did this backup account attempt to switch to an incorrect version?
She had no answer. I clicked to the second page. Julian's records of sending materials to a competing firm's email address in the early hours also appeared on the screen.
File names Apex 2.
Zero demo flow, core parameter explanation, Meridian custom plan excerpt.
The crowd below was in complete uproar.
Mr.
Grant stood up, his face ashen. CEO Cross, your internal management has severely compromised client information security. Meridian Global demands an immediate breach review.
Vivianne swayed.
I addressed the audience.
I formally reiterate that Julian Marsh has never received my authorization for the core algorithm of Apex. Any actions to display, modify, or transfer it in his name are unrelated to me. Vivianne's eyes shimmered. Julian was still struggling as security escorted him out from backstage. He shouted, "The CEO told me to do it."
She said Nathan Cole was in the way.
She said if I performed well, it'd get the director position. All cameras were on him. Vivianne closed her eyes. The dignity she had fought hardest to preserve shattered entirely. In that moment, I walked off the stage. As I passed her, she whispered, "Nathan Cole, don't go."
I didn't stop.
She reached out to grab me, but I sidestepped just like that night outside the hotel. Her hand missed again. Some in the audience recognized the gesture. Others recalled how she had called Julian Hubby that night. Low murmurs surged from all directions.
I left the venue.
Lena Park stood at the door, handing me a new document. Emergency board meeting at 3 p.m. CEO Cross requests your attendance. I took the file, which read, Accountability Motion, regarding major management negligence by CEO Vivianne Cross of Cross Innovations. I closed the file. The second reckoning had begun. On the day of the launch incident, Cross Innovations trended on business news. The headlines were brutal. CEO promotes junior associate core project. Nearly leaked. Internal strife at Cross Innovations launch. Real architect of Apex project revealed. Vivianne's photo was plastered on the news cover. Her in a white suit. Her face drained of color, with Julian's abnormal operation record on the big screen behind her. Julian also went viral. People dug up his education, his resume, and that screenshot of his post. "Thanks for the gift, darling." The comments were merciless.
I didn't bother to read them.
I sat in the law firm, organizing the divorce evidence item by item.
My lawyer, an old university senior named Matthew Lorne, reviewed the documents and glanced at me.
This isn't just a standard divorce. It's a combination of marital asset division, gift recovery, defamation, commercial licensing breach, and potential criminal liability.
I asked, how much can I recover?
Matthew replied from Julian the watch, penthouse expenses, car service, personal reimbursements. If we can prove they're linked to marital betrayal and improper benefit transfers, we can claim restitution. From Vivianne, The focus is on joint assets and your personal licensing revenue. I nodded. Then go all in. Matthew smiled slightly.
No mercy at all.
I looked out the window.
The night before, Vivienne had sent me over 30 messages, ranging from explanations to apologies to reminiscing to accusing me of coldness. The last one, at 4 a.m., said, "Nathan, I really never wanted to lose you." I didn't reply. Losing someone is never a single moment. It was the first time she let Julian sit in my seat. The first time she said I wasn't giving young people a chance. The first time she handed over my token. The first time she called another man husband in front of the entire company. After cutting me away piece by piece, she only realized I would leave. "This was Aunt, I didn't want to lose you." It was, "I thought you'd never leave." At 3 p.m., the emergency board meeting convened. When I arrived, the atmosphere in the conference room was heavy. Arthur Cross sat at the head of the table, his face dark with fury. Vivienne sat to his right, her eyes slightly swollen. Julian was absent. He had been suspended and handed over to legal and audit. But I knew things wouldn't be so simple. Sure enough, as soon as the meeting began, a senior VP named Howard Lim stood up. "I believe the priority now is to stabilize public opinion and reassure our clients, not to escalate internal conflicts." Director Cole, though the core technical lead, publicly exposed internal issues at today's launch, causing significant reputational damage to Cross Innovations. Vivienne remained silent, but the look she gave me carried a trace of expectation. She thought that by having someone shift the blame onto me, I would back down.
I looked at Howard.
"VP Lim, are you saying that Julian leaking trade secrets isn't important, but my exposing it is the problem?" Howard's expression turned awkward. "That's not what I mean. I'm saying this could have been handled internally." I nodded. "Then let me ask you, were the abnormal accounts at the launch attempting to switch to an incorrect version?" Grace Liu from Tech immediately replied, "Yes." "If the switch had succeeded, would the Apex system have failed during the demonstration?"
Yes.
"And if the demonstration failed, would Meridian Global have directly triggered a breach of contract?" Grace glanced at Vivienne before answering.
Yes.
I turned back to Howard. "So, by making the logs public, I prevented further losses."
"You claim I caused damage to the company?"
"Please provide evidence." Howard fell silent. Another board member spoke up.
"Director Cole, we acknowledge your technical contributions.
"But has your personal relationship with CEO Cross affected your judgment regarding the company's best interests?"
Vivienne's expression shifted.
She hadn't expected the board to bring up personal relationships directly. I pulled out a copy of our marriage certificate and placed it on the table. "Vivienne Cross and I have been married for 3 years. I am formally informing the board of this today."
A stir rippled through the room.
Arthur closed his eyes. He had known all along, but the others hadn't. I continued, "The confidential marriage was Vivienne's idea to avoid any perception that she relied on her husband to advance her career. I respected that. For 3 years, I never interfered in company management as her husband. But now she has used her authority as CEO to redirect my personal intellectual property, project results, and technical permissions to a junior associate with whom she has an ambiguous personal relationship. This is no longer a private matter." Vivienne's tears spilled over. "Julian and I never had a real relationship." I looked at her. "So calling him hubby, buying him a luxury watch, letting him stay in your penthouse, giving him the deputy director position, all of that was charity?" Her face went white. Arthur barked, "Enough."
I didn't stop.
I projected the bank transfers, reimbursement approvals, penthouse access logs, permission requests, and the abnormal accounts from the launch, page by page, each one like a slap to Vivienne's face and to everyone who had once sided with Julian. Finally, I played an audio clip from the launch's backstage surveillance. Julian's lowered voice, "As long as Nathan Cole fails the demo today, the CEO will have no choice but to use me. She won't let anything happen to me." Another voice asked, "Aren't you afraid she'll actually throw you under the bus?"
Julian laughed.
"When she calls me hubby, Shay's a lot gentler than she is with Nathan Cole." The conference room fell into a terrifying silence. Vivienne's tears stopped, as if she was seeing Julian clearly for the first time. I turned off the audio. "This is the person you cultivated." Vivienne's lips trembled violently. "I didn't know he was like this." I said, "You didn't know because you only wanted to hear him tell you how brilliant you were."
"You didn't want to hear me warn you about the risks?"
Her face was ashen. At the end of the meeting, the board made 3 decisions. First, suspend Vivienne Cross's full management authority over the Apex project. Second, establish a special audit committee to investigate the Julian Marsh incident and related approval responsibilities. Third, appoint me as the independent technical lead for the Apex project. renegotiating the license with Cross Innovations under my personal lab's name. After hearing the results, Vivienne looked utterly drained. As the meeting adjourned, she chased me to the elevator lobby.
Nathan, let's talk.
I pressed the elevator button.
She blocked my path.
Are you really going to divorce me?
I looked at her.
Didn't you already find yourself a new husband?
Tears streamed down her face. That was an angry remark. A joke! I lost my mind. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. She reached out to block the doors. If I publicly acknowledge you as my husband, publicly apologize to you.
Can you?
I cut her off. Vivienne, a belated public acknowledgement isn't respect. It's damage control. Her hand slowly lowered. Just before the elevator doors closed, I saw her standing there, finally stripped of the CEO's pride. My phone rang. Matthew Lorne sent a message. Julian is turning on you. Hess filed a police report claiming you illegally accessed his computer, fabricated evidence, and deliberately framed him out of jealousy.
I smiled.
When backed into a corner, people always bite, but he didn't know. I was waiting for him to take that bite. News of Julian's police report quickly spread through the company. Some began to waver. New theories emerged in internal group chats. Maybe Nathan Cole was just jealous and deliberately went after Julian?
A tech director could easily manipulate logs, right?
Could the evidence be tampered with?
Maybe the CEO and Julian really had nothing going on. Hubby was just a joke, and Nathan overreacted. I looked at the screenshots without anger. Lena Park sat across from me. So furious, she set her coffee cup down hard. Are these people forgetting that Julian's data leak records are right in front of them?
I said they haven't forgotten.
They're just scared. Scared of what? Scared of admitting they backed the wrong side. The people who cheered at the gala, who applauded Julian in meetings, who whispered behind my back about me having no social skills. They all need a reason to believe they weren't stupid.
So they're willing to believe him flawed too.
As long as I'm flawed, they're not accomplices. They were just misled.
I flipped my phone face down on the table.
Let them talk.
Lena frowned. You're not going to respond?
I opened my laptop.
Not by explaining.
In the afternoon, the corporate investigations unit and a third-party digital forensics team arrived at Cross Innovations. Julian sat in the conference room, his eyes red, still putting on a wounded act. The moment he saw me, he stood up. Director Cole, I know you hate me, but you can't ruin my life.
I just graduated.
I just wanted to do my job well. Vivienne sat nearby, her face pale. She glanced at Julian, but there was no pity in her eyes anymore, only disgust and exhaustion. I pulled out a chair and sat down.
Are you done?
Julian clenched his fists. The forensics team began checking the server back-end logs, Julian's computer, and the surveillance footage. Julian had clearly prepared. His computer was spotless, chat records deleted, emails wiped, and he had even proactively formatted a hard drive partition. He looked at me, a hint of smugness returning to his eyes. Director Cole, you say I leaked information? Then please provide the original evidence. Screenshots and recordings can be forged. I nodded.
Fair point.
Vivienne looked at me, seeming tense. She was afraid my chain of evidence would break, that this might backfire on her. I handed a USB drive to the forensics team.
Julian sneered.
Another one of your personal drives.
Who knows where the files inside came from? I ignored him. When the forensics team opened it, it wasn't screenshots. It was the hash verification records of the server's original audit logs. Every operation, when it occurred, was simultaneously synced to a third-party security platform. The platform provider wasn't Cross Innovations. It was a security audit firm, designated by Meridian Global. In other words, even if Julian wiped his own computer, he couldn't alter the external evidence. His face gradually turned pale. I then produced a second piece of evidence, surveillance footage from the penthouse elevator, showing Julian entering at 116 a.m. and leaving at 3:04 a.m., carrying a laptop bag. The third piece, the device connection log from the penthouse's network provider. The fourth, the receipt confirmation from the competing firm's email server. The fifth, a complete recording of Julian attempting to switch the demo version using the backup admin account that Vivienne had approved. No one spoke in the conference room. Julian's lips began to tremble. He looked at Vivienne. CEO, say something for me. Those accounts were given to me by you. The penthouse was your idea. You said you would protect me. Vivienne's head snapped up. When did I ever tell you to leak information? Julian said urgently. You said that if I secured Apex, no one would ever dare say you relied on Nathan Cole.
You said Nathan Cole was too domineering, suffocating you.
You said you needed a technical lead who would completely listen to you. The last trace of color drained from Vivienne's face. I watched her calmly, I wasn't surprised. She hadn't betrayed me because she loved Julian. She had betrayed me because she needed someone who worshipped her, depended on her, and never pointed out her mistakes. Julian gave her that illusion, and she wagered her marriage, her projects, and her company on it. The forensics team continued their work. Julian suddenly pointed at me.
But Nathan Cole isn't innocent either.
He was planning to revoke the license all along. He just wanted to force the CEO to submit. He never cared about cross-innovations. I said, I did care. I looked at Vivienne, but caring doesn't give you the right to steal from me. Vivienne's eyes reddened. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out.
At 6 p.m.,
the preliminary forensic conclusion was reached. Julian had engaged in unauthorized downloading and external distribution of project materials, maliciously interfered with the launch event, and sabotaged the demo environment. The issue of the forged digital signature required further investigation to determine the respective responsibilities of Vivienne and Julian. But one thing was clear: the evidence I provided had not been tampered with. The anonymous group chats fell completely silent. Half an hour later, HR issued an announcement. Julian Marsh is officially terminated, and Cross Innovations reserves the right to pursue full legal action. Vivienne Cross is suspended from her position as CEO pending a board review. After the message was sent, David Cho sent me a message. Brother Nathan, I'm sorry.
I shouldn't have laughed at the gala that day.
I replied with 2 words, I know.
Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement.
That evening, I went home to pack my things. Vivienne was already waiting for me in the living room. She wasn't wearing makeup, looking utterly haggard. Nothing like the commanding CEO she usually was. On the coffee table lay the wedding ring and the tie Julian had left behind. She had cut the tie to shreds. When she saw me come, she stood up. Nathan, I've thrown away all his things. I didn't respond, walking straight into the bedroom to pull out my suitcase.
She followed me.
I'll cooperate with the board investigation. I'll recover everything Julian took. I'll make a public apology. I placed my clothes into the suitcase one by one. Her voice began to tremble. Can you just look at me? Please. I stopped, turned my head, and looked at her. Tears fell from her eyes. I was wrong.
I was really wrong.
I didn't love him.
I just wanted so badly to prove that I wasn't relying on you.
I went astray.
I said, if you wanted to prove yourself, you could have led projects diligently, managed the team seriously, or learned to assess risks on your own. She nodded through her tears. I continued, but you chose the easiest way.
She froze.
You chose to deny me.
Her tears fell harder. I closed the suitcase. Vivienne Cross, I am not your shadow. You've been standing on my shoulders for so long that when you looked down and saw me, you thought I was blocking your light. She covered her mouth, unable to cry out loud. I pulled my suitcase toward the door. Suddenly she hugged me from behind. Don't go. I pried her fingers off, one by one. I'll submit the divorce cooling off application tomorrow. She stood there motionless. I reached the door and stopped. Also, I'll be applying for property division on the marital home.
I won't live in a place Julian has been.
The door closed. Inside, Vivienne called my name. This time, I didn't look back. As my car pulled out of the neighborhood, Matthew Lorne called. Nathan, Julian has confessed another thing. Vivienne was planning to remove you from your engineering director position at next week's board meeting and have him take over. I watched the streetlights receding outside the window, so they had already carved up my role. Then I'll show them. What they tried to take from me was something I gave them in the first place. On Monday, Cross Innovations held the formal board meeting. This time, it wasn't a temporary accountability session. It was a decision on Vivienne's fate. Security guards lined the meeting room entrance, and the media was blocked downstairs. Employees went about their work as usual on the surface, but everyone was waiting for the outcome. When I arrived, Vivienne was already seated inside. She wore a dark gray suit, her face expressionless. In just a few days, she had visibly lost weight. Arthur Cross sat at the head of the table, flanked by external board members and audit representatives.
Julian was also there, under guard, seated at the far end.
His face was ashen, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, venom still flickered in his gaze. The meeting began. The audit team reported first. Within 3 months, Julian had fraudulently claimed $48,000 in expenses, downloaded Apex project materials without authorization 16 times, sent materials to external email accounts 3 times, and maliciously manipulated the demo environment once during the launch. In the process of forging the digital signature, Vivienne provided the token, Julian completed the application, and Vivienne overstepped her authority to approve. Every detail was crystal clear. As Vivienne listened, her fingers kept gripping her pen, leaving deep scratches on the paper. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up. I admit to mismanagement. I also admit to making a grave error in judgment regarding Julian. I am willing to accept the corresponding consequences. A senior board member sneered.
Just an error in judgment?
Vivienne's face paled. The board member continued. You brought personal entanglements into project management, supported an unqualified associate to access core modules, bypassed legal review, caused a major client to suspend payments, and sent a public launch spiraling out of control. You call that an error in judgment? Vivienne lowered her head. I accept the board's disciplinary action. She offered no further defense. I could see she was trying to preserve a shred of dignity, but Julian didn't want her to have any. When it was Julian's turn, he stood up abruptly. I admit I made mistakes. But the CEO isn't innocent either. She approached me first. She said Nathan Cole was overbearing. She said if I listened to her, I could become a director. Vivienne closed her eyes. Julian continued shouting. She gave me the watch, the keys to the penthouse, made me act intimate with her at the gala. She said she wanted Nathan Cole to know the company didn't need him. Everyone looked at Vivienne. Her face was ash white. I wasn't surprised. People like him are sweet-tongued when things go their way, and the first to bite their master when the wind shifts. Arthur roared, "Shut up." Julian's eyes were red. Why should I shut up now that things have gone wrong? You crosses want to throw me out alone? I just got transferred here. I didn't steal the token. I didn't approve the permissions, and I didn't move into that penthouse on my own. Vivienne finally looked up, staring at Julian, her voice very soft.
So you admit that at the gala, you deliberately cooperated with me to provoke Nathan Cole.
Julian was stunned. Vivienne smiled, a bitter, hollow smile. And you also admit that you knew Nathan Cole and I were married. The meeting room fell silent again. I raised my eyes slightly. Julian's face crumpled. He had been too hasty and forgotten this point. If he hadn't known I was Vivienne's husband, he could have played the innocent pawn. But he did know. Knowing that and still publicly accepting the title of hubby, moving into the marital home and provoking me, that changed everything. Vivienne pulled out a recording, a conversation between her and Julian. Julian said, CEO, Director Cole looks at me so coldly.
Does he misunderstand us?
Vivienne said, he won't make a scene. Julian chuckled softly.
What if I really want him to misunderstand?
Vivienne was silent for a few seconds, then said, Don't go too far. The recording ended there. Vivienne looked at me. This is the only recording I kept. After that day, I should have immediately removed him from the project team. But I didn't. Tears fell from her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away.
Nathan Cole, I'm sorry.
Everyone looked at me.
I didn't respond.
If apologies were sufficient, there would be no need for evidence. I opened my laptop. Since everyone has spoken, let me add some material. The screen lit up. It was the personnel adjustment plan Vivienne had originally prepared to submit for next week. Revoke Nathan Cole's position as engineering director. Appoint Julian Marsh as technical lead for the Apex project. Transfer Nathan Cole to a technical advisory role, no longer involved in project decision-making or approvals. The notes read, reduce reliance on individual technical expertise. Cultivate a young management echelon. Signed by Vivienne Cross. When Vivienne saw this document, her face turned ashen. This was the truth she had never spoken aloud. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had genuinely been prepared to push me out. In the conference room, Arthur Cross was so enraged his hands trembled. An external board member stood up directly.
I propose removing Vivienne Cross from her position as CEO of Cross Innovations.
She may retain her status as a senior strategic advisor, but will no longer be involved in daily operations. Another board member nodded in agreement. Arthur was silent for a long time and finally raised his hand.
In agreement.
Vivienne sat in place as if she hadn't heard. The CEO position she had fought to build for 3 years was stripped away, just like that. But I felt no satisfaction, only a calm, resolute finality. After the vote, the board passed a second motion, resigning the Apex Technology licensing agreement with my personal laboratory, with fees calculated at market rates. The project lead would be appointed by me, the technical team managed by me, and Cross Innovations would not be authorized to change the core module manager without permission.
I didn't sign immediately.
Arthur looked at me.
What other conditions do you have?
I said a public statement.
What statement?
It should clarify the ownership of the core technology of the Apex project, explain Julian's violations, and state that I never voluntarily transferred authority. Arthur frowned.
This will make the company look terrible.
I looked at him. Chairman Cross, It looks terrible because terrible things were done, not because I'm asking for the truth to be told. Arthur's face went pale, but in the end he nodded. After the meeting, Julian was taken away. As he passed me, he suddenly stopped. Nathan Cole, so what if you won?
Vivienne already discarded you?
You're just a pathetic cuckold. The security guard restrained him. I looked at him and suddenly smiled.
You're wrong.
He froze. I'm the one who discarded her. The malice in Julian's face stiffened. Vivienne stood not far away, hearing these words, and tears suddenly streamed down her face. I didn't look at her. I packed my laptop and walked out of the conference room. Downstairs in the lobby, the employees quieted as they saw me emerge.
Before, they had looked at me as an unsociable tech director.
Now, they looked at me as someone who had finally stepped out of the shadows. David Cho stood among the crowd and whispered, "Brother Nathan." I nodded and kept walking. At the entrance of Cross Innovations, Mr. Grant's assistant was waiting for me.
Mr.
Cole, Mr. Grant would like to discuss an independent collaboration with you.
I took the business card.
Behind me came the sound of heels. Vivienne caught up.
Nathan.
I stopped. She stood a few steps away. Her voice choked. Can we really not go back? I looked at her. Vivienne Cross, the night you called him hubby. We couldn't go back. Her face turned ashen. I turned and got into the car. The door closed and she stood there, growing smaller and smaller in the distance. This time, she finally didn't chase after me. After the divorce cooling off period began, Vivienne sent me messages every day. Have you eaten? In the morning, an old photo at noon, a long apology at night. I didn't reply to a single one.
Matthew Lorne said, Shez cooperating with the asset liquidation now, but Shez still stalling on the divorce itself.
I said, she can't stall forever. He nodded. We have enough evidence. Her substantial gifts to Julian during the marriage can be reclaimed. The forged authorization and gross negligence will also affect the property division negotiations. I signed the documents. Follow the procedure. Divorce doesn't need emotions. It needs a checklist. Real estate, vehicles, deposits, equity, licensing fees, marital debts, reclaimed gifts, item by item. I used to think marriage was a home. Now I realize that when someone begins to betray, marriage first becomes a ledger. Who gave how much, who took how much, who pretended not to see, it's all recorded. On the 10th day of the cooling off period, Vivienne asked to meet me. The location was the cafe where we had first discussed the Apex project.
I didn't want to go at first, but then Lena sent me new information. You'd better see her.
There is another layer to Julian's relationship with the competing firm. When I arrived at the cafe, Vivienne was already sitting by the window. She wasn't in a suit, just a beige trench coat. Seeing me, she stood up.
You're here.
I sat down. Yeah. A flicker of pain crossed her eyes. I wouldn't have spoken to her so curtly before. Before, when she was tired, I would ask if she needed rest. Now, even when she cried, I only wanted to look at the documents.
She pushed a file toward me.
I found this from Julian's old laptop. His approach to me wasn't a coincidence. I opened it. Inside were chat records between Julian and the business development director of the competing firm. 3 months ago, before Julian was transferred to Cross Innovations, he had already contacted them. They told him to find a way into the Apex project and obtain the technical data. Julian said Vivienne is my senior. She's most afraid of people saying she relies on Nathan Cole. I'll exploit that.
I read on.
Julian added, she needs someone who admires her. As long as I'm obedient enough, she'll give me a chance. There were more screenshots. On his first day at work, Julian messaged the contact. Vivienne really fell for it. I told her she's the most brilliant CEO I've ever met, and she smiled. I closed the file. Vivienne's tears had already fallen.
Nathan, I was so stupid.
I know I was so stupid, but I truly never thought he was after the project.
I looked at her.
Him going after the project and you betraying our marriage are two different things.
Her face paled.
I know.
I said, you weren't deceived by him. You gave him the opening first, and only then did he have the chance to exploit you. She covered her eyes. There weren't many people in the cafe, and a light rain was falling outside the window. I suddenly remembered 3 years ago, on a similarly rainy day, Vivienne sitting in the same seat, eyes red, asking me, Nathan, if one day no one believes me.
Will you believe me?
I said yes.
Later, I did believe her many times. So many times that even she forgot trust can be exhausted. Vivienne took a small box from her bag. Inside was my authentication token, the real one.
She pushed it toward me.
I never dared to return it to you. I looked at the black token, but didn't touch it. Her voice was choked. When I got it last month, I just wanted to let Julian familiarize himself with the process. I thought I could control it.
I didn't expect.
I interrupted her.
You did expect it. She looked up. I said, you just don't want to admit it. She froze. You knew it was wrong to give him the token. You knew it was wrong to bypass legal. You knew it was wrong for him to sit in my seat. And you knew it was wrong to call him hubby. But every single time you chose the answer that was more comfortable for you. She finally sobbed. Nathan,
Can I really still make things right?
I looked at her. You can make things right for the project, for the client, for your own judgment. But not for me. The glimmer of hope in her eyes died out again. She sat there, as if she had aged several years in an instant.
I stood up.
She frantically grabbed my sleeve. Don't go.
I still have something to say.
I looked down at her hand. She trembled and slowly let go.
I said, you've said enough already.
What about you? She asked, looking up at me. Is there anything you want to say to me? I was silent for a few seconds.
Yes.
She held her breath. Get back what Julian took. That's marital property. Not your personal funds to pay for a lesson. Vivian's face turned white as paper. She thought I would say I hated her, or that I regretted everything, or something that still carried a trace of warmth. But I only talked about settling accounts. That was crueler than hate. I walked out of the cafe. Rain fell softly on my umbrella.
My phone buzzed.
A message from Mr. Grant. Mr.
Cole, the independent cooperation agreement is ready.
Awaiting your confirmation. I typed my reply. Cole Labs officially launching next week. After sending the message, I muted Vivian's chat.
Not blocking her, just finally too tired to look.
On the day the divorce cooling off period ended, Vivian arrived early at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. She was wearing a coat the same color as the one she wore on our wedding day, except that day she was smiling and holding my arm. Today, she stood at the bottom of the steps, clutching the divorce agreement, her knuckles white. When I arrived, she looked up at me.
Nathan.
I nodded. Matthew and her lawyer were both present. The process was swift. The property division had already been settled. The marital home would be sold and divided according to actual capital contribution ratios, with me recouping the majority of the principal. The watch, penthouse expenses, car service, and personal reimbursements Vivian had gifted Julian during the marriage would be compensated by her first to restore the marital assets, and then she could seek recourse from Julian. The licensing fees owed by Cross Innovations to my lab would be paid in 3 installments. The new Apex licensing agreement had already been signed with my lab. Julian, cut off by the competing firm and facing a corporate espionage lawsuit from Cross Innovations, tried to use a woman to climb up, but ultimately couldn't even preserve his own future. When the clerk was verifying the information, Vivian kept looking at me. Do both parties voluntarily agree to the divorce? I said voluntarily. Vivian didn't answer immediately. The clerk asked again. Her tears fell as she said, voluntarily. The stamp came down. The red booklet was exchanged for a different kind of certificate. Legally, we were finally disconnected. Walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Vivian suddenly called out to me.
Nathan Cole.
I stopped. She handed me a box. Inside were the wedding rings.
I know you won't want them.
But I still wanted to give them back to you.
I didn't take them.
Throw them away. Pain flashed in her eyes. Do you really have no regrets at all?
I looked at her.
I did have regrets.
Her tears fell again. I continued, but not anymore. Nearby, a young couple who had just gotten their marriage certificate passed by, the girl laughing as she held up the red booklet for a photo. Vivian watched them, as if seeing herself from 3 years ago. She suddenly said, if I hadn't called him hubby at that gala.
Would we not have ended up like this?
I shook my head.
No!
She froze. That night just let me finally hear the truth. What really pushed us to this point was every time before that when you chose to ignore the boundaries. She lowered her head, crying so hard, her shoulders trembled. I didn't offer a tissue, didn't comfort her, didn't say take care. I turned and walked toward the roadside. Mr. Grant's car was already waiting. That afternoon, Cole Labs and Meridian Global officially signed the Independent Cooperation Agreement. The Apex second generation would be split into a new version, independently serving Meridian and other clients. I was no longer the silent engineering director of Cross Innovations, nor the invisible husband behind Vivian. The car door opened, and just as I was about to get in, hurried footsteps came from behind. Vivian ran over, her face pale, barely able to stand.
Nathan.
Can I have one last hug?
I looked at her for a moment. I thought of many things from the past, of her eating instant noodles in our rented apartment while tearfully revising business proposals, of her throwing herself into my arms with excitement when she signed her first client, of her saying on the day we got our marriage certificate, from now on, you are my anchor. But later, she turned that anchor into a chain, took companionship for granted, and saw my concessions as a guarantee I would never leave. I stepped back. Don't touch me. She was stunned. I looked at her and completed the belated farewell.
Go find your husband.
All color drained from her face.
Those words had circled back to us from the entrance of that hotel that night. Only this time, she no longer had the right to panic and explain. I got into the car. In the rearview mirror, she stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the ring box fallen to the ground. The lid open, 2 rings rolling out. No one picked them up. At 3 p.m. in the Meridian Global Conference Room, Mr. Grant signed the contract with me personally. The contract value was 20% higher than the original Cross Innovations version, because this time, the client wasn't just buying a system. They were buying clear technical ownership, a stable point of contact, and unambiguous licensing boundaries. After signing, Mr. Grant raised his teacup. Mr. Cole, congratulations on a fresh start.
I clinked my cup with his.
It's not a fresh start. He looked at me. I said, it's taking back what was always mine. After the meeting, I received an announcement from Cross Innovations. Vivienne Cross had officially stepped down as CEO, retaining only the position of Senior Strategic Advisor. A new CEO had been appointed from an external professional management firm. At the end of the announcement, the company publicly acknowledged that the core technology of Apex belonged to Cole Labs and apologized to clients and partners for prior management errors. After the announcement, many former colleagues messaged me. Some apologized, some congratulated, some tentatively asked if they could join my lab. I only replied to a few who had consistently delivered solid work. Grace Liu, David Cho, and 2 engineers who had always held the line. That evening, I held the first team meeting in my new office. The space wasn't huge, with a panoramic view of the city nightscape through the glass windows. There was no champagne tower, no hollow applause, just a few computers, some contracts, and a group of people willing to do things the right way. At the end of the meeting, Grace asked me, "Boss, what should we call the new project?" I thought for a moment.
Dawn?
She smiled.
That's a good name.
I looked out the window as the city lights shimmered calmly. It was a good name, not because anyone had regretted their actions, but because I no longer had to prove I deserved respect. I always had. 6 months later, the Dawn system officially launched. The first batch of trial data from Meridian Global came in. Efficiency was 51% higher than the old Apex version. Industry media came to interview us on their own initiative. This time, the cameras only captured me and my team. No one stood in the spotlight taking credit for others' work. No one played the role of the silent, suffering martyr behind the scenes. A reporter asked me, "Mr.
Cole, you've been through a major collaboration breakdown.
Do you regret going independent now?" I thought for a moment. No regrets. The reporter looked a bit surprised. I said, "Adults make choices and accept the consequences. That's true for business. And it's true for marriage." After the interview aired, Vivienne sent me a message. I saw the interview.
You're doing well now.
I didn't reply. She sent another. Cross Innovations has stabilized recently too. Julian's case is nearly settled. He'll have to pay full compensation and will have a permanent criminal record. The competing firm has been blacklisted by Meridian Global, and their business development director is under investigation. I still didn't respond. After a while, she sent one last message. "Nathan, I finally understand."
You weren't holding me back before?
You were holding me up. I looked at those words, feeling nothing inside.
Understanding too late is just a summary, not compensation. I turned off my phone and continued reviewing the new version report submitted by my team.
Life grew simpler.
Mornings at the lab, lunch with the team, occasional evenings at my parents' house. My parents had never known Vivienne and I were married. After learning about the divorce, my mom was silent for a long time, then just said, "It's good to have you back." My dad was more direct. He ladled me a bowl of soup. In life, it's not falling down that matters. It's falling at someone else's feet and not getting back up.
I smiled.
I'm already up.
Later, David Cho invited me to dinner.
He raised his glass, his face flushed with shame. "Brother Nathan, I was such a coward that night at the gala. I knew you were hurting, but I still told you not to take it to heart. The truth is, I was afraid of offending the CEO. I said, 'You don't need to explain yourself to me.'" He gave a bitter smile.
I know you won't forgive me.
I looked at him.
I don't hate you.
He was stunned. "I just won't trust you with important work in the future." That hurt him more than any scolding. Between adults, sometimes you don't need to fall out, you just need to cross someone off your list of trusted people. The day Julian's verdict was handed down, Lena sent me the news link. He was ordered to pay full restitution and bore criminal liability for trade secret infringement. That $18,000 watch was recovered and auctioned, and the penthouse expenses were included in the recovery order. He cried in court, claiming he was just used by Vivienne. The judge asked him, "So you admit that, knowing the other party was married, you still exploited an ambiguous personal relationship to gain project access?" He fell silent. Vivienne also attended the trial. The media captured her standing outside the courthouse, pale-faced, without an assistant or driver. The once celebrated CEO had finally learned to face the wreckage alone. I didn't go. There was no need.
My battlefield was long behind me.
The next time I saw Vivienne was at an industry forum. I was on stage as the head of the Dawn system, delivering the keynote speech. She sat in the third row, thinner than before, and much calmer. After the speech, many people crowded around to exchange business cards. She stood outside the crowd, not approaching. When the crowd thinned, she walked over. "Nathan Cole." I looked at her.
"Something you need?"
She smiled bitterly. "No, just wanted to say to you, in person."
"Congratulations."
"And thank you."
She looked at me, her eyes still tinged with red. "I'm doing basic operational consulting now.
No longer managing strategic projects."
My father has also stepped back. Cross Innovations is being run by professional managers. I used to think I had to stand at the very top to prove myself.
Now I know.
A title isn't ability. Being able to bear the consequences, that is. I nodded.
That's good.
She seemed to want to say more, but finally just asked, "Will you ever get married again?" I looked at her without answering. She smiled self-deprecatingly. "Sorry,
I shouldn't have asked."
I said. Vivienne moved forward. Her eyes suddenly reddened. That sentence was very calm. No hatred, no love, no entanglement. She finally understood. She nodded.
Okay.
She turned and left. This time, she didn't look back, and neither did I. After the forum, Mr.
Grant invited me to dinner, but I declined.
I returned to the lab and found the team still working overtime, munching on takeout while debugging the system. Grace and a new engineer arguing passionately over a piece of logic. When they saw me, they called me over to check the test results. I took off my suit jacket and sat down at the terminal. On the screen, the new version of the Dawn system generated a set of beautiful, stable metrics. Grace excitedly slapped the table. "Boss, this one is rock solid." I looked at the steadily running system prompt and suddenly smiled. Once, I had hidden my own light to illuminate another person's stage. Later on that stage, she called someone else husband. Everyone thought I would endure it. Thought I couldn't leave her. Couldn't leave Cross Innovations. Couldn't leave that arranged position.
But they forgot.
I wrote the system.
I built the project.
I paved the path step by step. I could lift a nearly bankrupt company back onto its feet, and I could just as surely pull myself out of a ruined marriage.
At 11 p.m.
The lab lights were still on. I stood by the window, overlooking the entire city. My phone vibrated.
An unknown number.
The text was short. Nathan Cole. "This is Julian." After I got out, I had nothing left. Vivienne ruined me.
"And you ruined me too."
I read it and deleted it immediately. People always like to call their own greed being ruined.
He wasn't ruined by me.
He was ruined by every shortcut he took, every provocation he made, every time he reached for something that was never his. A moment later, Vivienne also sent a message. "He might try to harass you. Be careful. I've already filed a police report." This time I replied with 2 words. Received.
She didn't send anything for a long time.
After 10 minutes, she replied, "Thank you for still being willing to respond."
I didn't look at it again.
The next morning, I exported all the old photos of her from my phone, saved them to an encrypted drive and sealed it in an archive box. It wasn't that I couldn't bear to delete them. I just acknowledged that those years had existed. Acknowledgement isn't turning back. Sealing something away isn't nostalgia. It's giving the past a clear final boundary. A month after the Dawn system went live, we landed our second major client. The team held a celebration dinner. No champagne towers, no ambiguous jokes. As everyone raised their glasses, Grace shouted to Nathan, to Dawn. I raised my glass, and they all clinked together with a crisp, clear sound. At that moment, I suddenly remembered that night half a year ago, at the hotel entrance, when Vivienne reached out to grab my arm and I sidestepped, saying, "Don't touch me."
Go home with your husband?
That sentence was the first cut I made against her, and the first path to survival I carved for myself. Looking back now, what I'm most grateful for isn't that I defeated Julian, or reclaimed the project, or even that Vivienne regretted everything. What I'm most grateful for is that night, I didn't pretend not to hear. I didn't keep enduring. I didn't trade my dignity for an explanation from someone who had already betrayed me. After the dinner ended, I walked out of the restaurant alone. The night breeze was cool, so I draped my jacket over my arm, and slowly made my way to the parking lot. The city lights fell across the pavement like a clean new road. I knew there would be new projects, new collaborations, a new life ahead, and perhaps new relationships too. But I would never again hide my name for anyone. Never again swallow others' disrespect for the sake of the so-called bigger picture. Never again let someone who called another person husband reach out and touch my hand. I pulled open the car door and sat inside.
My phone screen lit up.
The Dawn system backend had sent an operations report. The status bar showed only 2 words, system stable. I smiled and started the engine. The road ahead was open and all the lights were green. This time, I was no longer standing behind anyone.